Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Woman in Progress podcast. I'm your host, Coach Lexi, and I'm super excited to talk about today's topic because this is a topic that comes up in a lot of conversation on a daily basis. And that is the desire to break free from these toxic dieting cycles of losing weight and then gaining it back over time, or falling into yo-yo dieting and being so up and down in your weight, or having these high highs and these low lows, or just really struggling to achieve the physique that you want in a way that is sustainable for you long term. This can show up in so many different ways. And so I personally struggled with this cycle for years. And I was able to, of course, through years of experience, evidence-based knowledge, and, just even my own coaches that I worked with, they were able to support me in healing my relationship with food and achieving those long-term results. Now I help other women do the same. So picture this. Every spring and summer, you lose the weight. You're doing some type of shred challenge, and every fall and winter, you gain it all back and then some. You may tell yourself that you're bulking and cutting, but really, we're just gaining and regaining the same. We're losing and regaining the same 10 to 20 pounds, every single year. Or on another spectrum, maybe you're just slowly and sneakily gaining weight year after year, but not really making much it doesn't feel like you're eating any differently, but year after year after year, you're slowly putting on weight, and you're looking at pictures of yourself and you're like, wait, what the fuck? Hold up, when did that happen? You know what I mean? So that can also look like that. This kind of cycle where we are, in a yo-yo diet cycle, or what I call a calorie deficit cycle, is maybe you're just someone who falls in the category of weekday dieting, where during the week you're quote unquote good, but by the time the weekend comes, you're either so burnt out and you just say F it and you eat all of the foods that you were craving from the week, or you just completely let loose and you just self-sabotage until Monday, right? Monday comes around, you feel like shit, and cue excessive activity, skipping meals, or fasting, and a blanket of shame and guilt to top it off. And the cycle continues. So I was stuck in the cycle for years. And so I know what it feels like to feel like, oh my God, what am I missing? I guess I'm just not that type of person. I had truly gotten to the point in my life at some point where I just started to accept the fact that maybe I would never actually get to where it is that I want to be. I just literally just started to honestly accept the fact that I would never be able to get the toned physique that I wanted and be able to maintain it. That I would probably struggle with my relationship with food and my body image probably for the rest of my life. I had really gotten to the place where I just started to toy with the idea of that just being my reality. Until I literally threw up at the thought of that, and I was like, no, bitch, there has to be a better way. I am going to find the help. I'm going to find a coach that I align with and find a program that I align with. And I've had multiple great coaches throughout my lifetime, some, more equipped than others. And that was just a part of my journey. But more importantly, of course, I did get, educated. I did get certified in actual sports nutrition and understanding my macros and getting educated. And, of course, through experience and working and helping with, helping hundreds of women be able to lose the body fat, build the muscle, but also heal the relationship with food and get the proper knowledge and education that is needed and work on their mindset and their identity. And so I'm now in that place. I'm literally living the reality that I had visualized for myself, 10 years ago, 7 years ago. I'm living that. I used to be terrified to eat more than 15 or 1600 calories, max 1700, I would always promise that I'd be quote unquote good, only to binge at night like clockwork. I'm going to be good today. Today I'm going to be good, right? Boom, you get home from work, or nighttime comes around and it's what can I eat? This would be followed by always trying to undo my binge sessions with tons of cardio and under eating. And this would just lead me to cycles of feeling constantly inflamed, just disgusting in my body, and not from like an appearance standpoint, but just like how I felt, and bloated from these habits. I was constantly bloated from overeating, and then I was constantly not satiated from the restriction. And so it was this vicious cycle that, of course, led to long-term weight gain and crash dieting and finding myself in these cycles of losing the weight and gaining it back, or just constantly being in the pursuit of this body that I desired that was actually strong and muscular, and lean and healthy, but I was picturing as like I needed to eat like a bird. And I just think a lot of times as women, we have, and we were programmed to have, a really shitty conception on what it means to be toned and fit and lean. And a lot of the times we equate that with, of course, restriction and cutting out certain foods, or labeling foods as good and bad, or can't have and can have, and should have and shouldn't have, which creates a lot of shame and guilt around eating certain foods. And then it's just the cycle, right? And so if we desire to break out of this cycle, we have to understand where it all stems from, okay? So the not eating enough, the unconscious, whether the restriction and the under eating and the skipping meals, or maybe you are eating quote unquote good and you are trying to eat intuitively, but you still don't really understand your macros. You still don't really understand if you're actually getting enough protein in the day. You still don't actually understand if you're eating enough healthy carbs. You still maybe struggle with a sweet tooth or cravings, and you give in a lot, like that type of energy. We're still talking to you here, right? Because it can show up in really sneaky ways, but that stems from a fear of like gaining weight, right? Or regaining weight, depending on where you're at in your journey. Or a fear of not losing weight. Or just ignorance and lack of education and proper knowledge, and just having too many blind spots and not knowing that those blind spots are there. We call it being problem unaware. So when we are problem aware, we know that something is actually an issue. When we are problem unaware, we are doing things that we don't actually know are an issue. And I would say one of those things will be like when I talk to women, this used to be me, so no judgment or shame, but it would be like, oh, like I eat clean, like I eat healthy. And then when I ask them, it's like they're unconsciously restricting carbs. They're saying that they can't have these certain foods. And to them, that's good. Like, that's like, yes, the good, right? And there's even trainers and honestly unqualified coaches out there that are perpetuating that same bullshit. So again, if you're going to hire a coach, you need to literally vet that motherfucker, okay? And really be aligned with the program and all of that. But anyway, to stay on track, most of us don't even know how little we're eating because we're just not aware. And then we think that it's us that is the problem, when really, if we find ourselves overeating in certain foods, that is always stemming from some level of restriction, whether it's just an unconscious awareness around not eating enough food and it's catching up to you in your appetite, or it's a conscious restriction. And then we are then, of course, overeating, and then it becomes a habit, right? There are, of course, like little nuances that can get sprinkled in there, like, relying on food for emotion and comfort. But that's a conversation for another day, okay? So real fat loss and muscle building occurs best in phases over time for the majority of general population, okay? I'm not talking about the genetically, gifted person over here or whatever that can fucking eat at maintenance for 6 months and be able to build muscle and all of that. I'm talking about the person who probably has to go through a fat loss phase, who has to go through a building phase, who has to, really work to build that drastic change in our physique, right? And so you can complain and you can be like, well, why do I? Or you can fucking toughen up and do the work, period. Like, at the end of the day, there's always going to be people who might seemingly have it easier, but that is energy leaking from your power. You're giving your power away when we do that. And, we're exempting ourselves from doing the work, and we're basically telling ourselves that we're not resilient and we're not strong enough and we're not resourceful enough to be able to get to where it is that we want to be. Okay. So a lot of times we want to get toned, we want to lose fat, we want to build muscle, we want to build this healthy relationship with food. And what we're doing is, it's beautiful on paper, but it doesn't actually fit into our lives, right? So what I really kind of want to present to you guys is how I personally overcame this yo-yo dieting cycle, this cycles of under eating and overeating, and how I actually healed my relationship with food and how I help women do the same. Okay. So you're not gonna achieve your goal physique, your dream body, by eating at maintenance calories for 6 months. It's not gonna happen after doing 1 calorie deficit phase, right? I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. Y'all wanna build your dream physique. And again, it doesn't need to be like some crazy, like unattainable thing, but whatever you visualize for you, if that means having a big booty and toned legs and toned arms and a shredded back and like you still have a healthy body fat percentage, but it's like fit curves, like however you identify that in a way that's healthy, then like claim that desire, you know what I mean? But that also comes with strategy and proper strategy and going through the proper phases with nutrition and training. And you're like, I observe that people, I don't think a lot of us understand like actually like what it takes. And not that it's hard, but just that it takes strategy and it takes time. So your dream body is achievable. So it's just not going to happen in 8 weeks. It's not going to happen just because you lost the weight once. It's going to happen by understanding certain pillars to transformation and, understanding how the metabolism and how the body works and how physique development works. And I competed in bikini bodybuilding for 3.5 years. And so I like to apply those principles with our clients is like, yes, we want to take a holistic approach. We want to focus on mindfulness and our relationship with food. And we want to get educated. But like also let's apply like this fun physique build, like lifestyle physique building to it. Cause a lot of us do want to, at least the women that I work with, they want all of that like mental work and like those mental shifts and the self-love. But they also want to build muscle and build a booty and get gains and feel strong and confident and sexy. And sexy is an energy. Okay. But a lot of times that equates to that. So what helped me really kind of get to the other side of like that yo dieting and just getting to where I am today and helping other women do the same is honestly, if we're talking about achieving your fat loss goals, your muscle building goals, and healing your relationship with food and getting educated around nutrition, this is best done in a phasic approach and going through a phasic process. So within Embody Her, and Embody Her is my one-on-one women's online nutrition and fitness coaching program. We take a holistic approach to healing your relationship with food, getting educated around your macros and your nutrition, and building your dream body. And so what we do is we take our clients through a phasic approach, and I call it our client success journey. It's a roadmap that I've created in order to support women like you and to break free from these yo-yo dieting cycles, build the muscle, lose the fat, build the proper habits and behaviors to actually be able to hold those results that you do achieve long-term, right? Because if you think about it, anytime you get a quick fix, what happens? You don't really value the outcome. You didn't really put in the work required. You didn't really put in the time to really build the skill sets and really learn. So you gain the weight back. But when we have a big picture mindset and we're focusing on the long term and we're focusing less on what we can do in 12 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever, more what we can do for ourselves over a year to 2 years of receiving support and being on this journey, or even longer than that, right? Then we can actually enjoy the process and go through each phase needed. So that's pretty much what I did, and that's pretty much what I help our clients do. So What I did is I actually went from under eating and I actually completed a reverse diet to recover my metabolism from years of under eating and overeating and restriction. I understood what it meant to live at maintenance calories, which for me, I was eating, I only really knew how to eat 16 to 700 calories a day. So 16 to 1700 calories a day. So I was maintaining my weight on like basically what should have been my deficit calories. So I really learned how to live at maintenance. And I spend a lot of time living at true maintenance. And a lot of people get this confused, just like winging their nutrition. Like, no, like just because you're not tracking and you're like, just eating whatever on a daily basis, that doesn't necessarily mean you're still eating enough to support muscle recovery and any other goals. So it really depends on your goals. But my personal goals was not only to heal my relationship with food and my metabolism, but also to, of course, like build my physique over time. I just was not comfortable with my physique. Okay. Of course, focusing on resistance training, perfecting your form, technique. And so that is really what I learned. And so I apply these principles within Embody Hers 101 coaching program. So we have to really understand, like before we go into the phases, we have to understand the foundational pillars of transformation, okay? With Embody Her, we have 3 pillars to transformation. We've got macros, mindset, and metabolism, okay? And so macros is basically short for macronutrient. It's basically the basics of nutrition, your protein, carbs, and fats. And so within each pillar, we're doing a lot of work within each pillar, okay? So this is the foundation. I like to think of the phases as the road and the pillars of transformation as like the car, right? It's a container. So with macros, with the nutrition, we really want to work on reprogramming our mind from like toxic diet culture and weight loss culture and like instant gratification and quick weight loss schemes to gaining empowerment through education. I am a big believer in teaching a woman how to fish, not just giving her the fish. So I am really big on teaching my clients about their macros and how to track their macros, living at maintenance calories. And that is usually like the bread and butter of our program. Okay. Then of course, moving out of unconscious restriction, under eating, and just overall like feeling like you don't eat bad, but just having a lack of awareness around your intake, to moving to a place of being more aware and knowledgeable about your nutrition and your body's needs, right? So that's the first pillar. The second pillar is mindset, okay? We can learn about nutrition, we can learn about all the things, but if we are not changing your inner world, then your outer reality is always going to reflect back to you what your core beliefs are and your assumptions are about yourself, about the process. And so what we really want to work on and what we do within our program is working to bring you out of like a fixed mindset to having more of a growth mindset, right? Understanding and becoming aware of like self-sabotaging patterns and how to move through that. Being able to get curious with the self-sabotaging patterns and the ways that we unintentionally hold ourselves back out of fear of failure or fear of success, right? And then of course, like changing your identity. A lot of times when we're on this journey of like actually healing our relationship with food and getting educated, like sometimes if challenges come our way and we are operating in this victim mentality or whatever, then we can kind of have this imposter syndrome, and it's not a bad thing. Like if you do go through that, it's not a bad thing. I've gone through it. I still go through it. It's just about understanding how to navigate it. Self-doubt will come up. And it's just because a lot of the times when we've been so used to living a certain way, we actually, kind of create a sense of safety and familiarity with it, even if it's not making us happy. And again, this is very unconscious. So we like to help our clients move through that so they can start to view themselves as the gym girly, as the woman who is a mom and, can pour into herself and doesn't like have these shitty boundaries where she's giving and giving and giving and giving, but getting nothing in return and left with the crumbs for the day, right? Or tying your worthiness to your productivity or however that's showing up for you. Perfectionism, all or nothing thinking. Like there's so many ways that this can come up, especially in our journey. And so it's so helpful to actually have a container where you're receiving that reassurance, you're receiving that probing and that really kind of hands-on guidance and community support. And so if you want more of that, I highly, recommend joining my private Facebook group. It's free. And I talk a lot about mindset, psychology, behavior change, spirituality, all of the unseen things that go on behind the scenes of breaking free from these toxic cycles of living and becoming the version of yourself that you motherfucking know is already in there. I'm done. Anyway, and then the last pillar of transformation is metabolism. You can pair muscle building into this. Muscle, increases your metabolic rate. But when it comes to metabolism, right, this goes back to the undereating. We're going from, undereating to becoming a fueled queen. We're going from like this winging our nutrition to actually being aware of like our intake so we can eventually actually continue to eat intuitively, but accurately, right? And of course, going through a phasic approach so that way we are able to lose the body fat, build the muscle, and your body can actually respond to that. And so for your body to actually respond to a calorie deficit or a weight loss phase and to be able to actually be primed and ready for that, we need to make sure that we are going through this phasic approach. So you might be listening to this podcast and you might be thinking, wow, this is all so much great information. You might be getting a little overwhelmed and thinking about like, oh my God, what? Like pillars to transformation, phases. And if that's the case, I just want you to listen to this podcast over and over again. Listen to my other podcasts. Because what I'm really telling you guys is like the what, right? Like this is like the what. This is like what you need to learn. This is what you need to know. Okay? When it comes to the actual how, I am actually going to be holding a free workshop in the Embody Her Facebook community, linked in the description below, where I'll be going into depth on the how to break free from the yo-yo dieting cycle yourself and what steps to actually take from there. So you'll want to make sure to join the Facebook group. And if you're not in the Facebook group, make sure to join. If you are in the Facebook group, be on the lookout for the invitation so you don't miss out on this amazing workshop. It's going to be so fire. But shifting gears, to bring it back to yo-yo dieting, being stuck in a calorie deficit cycle or even like this recomp cycle where you always want to lose fat, build muscle, and you might be making some progress, but you kind of feel like you don't have clarity on where it is that you're going, right? And if that is the case, then you have to gain clarity on where it is to go next. And if you don't know the answer to that, ask the right questions, right? Y'all can DM me, shit. But what we do for our clients and what we do to support them, and this again is what I did in my own journey to overcome this yo-yo dieting cycle, these cycles of losing the weight, gaining the weight back slowly over time, always crash dieting and then gaining the weight back slowly over time. And depending on where you're at in your dieting history, that you may have only done that twice so far. Like maybe you've lost a lot of weight and now you've hit a plateau, but you're still trying to lose weight, right? Like there's so many different standing points on where we're at in our own metabolic journey. But the purpose of this phasic approach, I call it our 4-phase to fit approach, is to really, again, allow you to go through each phase where we are periodizing your nutrition, your training, your habits, and all the mental things that we're working on that are over time, compounded over time, going to lead to that full mind, body, physical transformation that you desire. And so this is why a lot of our clients work with me and Embody Her for minimum 1 to 2 years. I've had clients on my roster for 4 years, just because they just want to continue to improve. They're loving the results and they just don't want to leave. And I love it. But phase 1 is our build to burn phase. And in this phase, guys, this is when you have been in this undereating cycle and maybe you feel like you barely eat or you eat really clean, but you're not like really losing weight, or you feel like you hit a plateau, or maybe you've lost a lot of weight, right? There's so many different nuances to this, but essentially the candidate for our build to burn phase is somebody who may or may not just know some of the basics of nutrition, but just really needs to understand her nutrition, understand her metabolism, learn what it feels and what it looks like to not focus on dieting so you can understand that, build muscle, and build the foundation. Metabolically, so getting your metabolism to a place where you are not maintaining your weight on low calories, you're actually able to maintain your weight on high calories, right? This is called, upregulating your metabolism or going through a reverse diet or a maintenance phase. And in Build to Burn, we're really just focused on priming your metabolism and your mind for future fat loss, okay? Now, a lot of people in this phase do experience some body recomposition, but most of the progress in this phase is like, inches going down or, going up even like in the glutes and like building muscle and healing our relationship with food and implementing a reverse diet and not focusing on weight loss, okay? After a couple months of that, then we can transition to phase 2, which is then we go into a deficit, okay? So you guys can try these phases on your own, but I will say it is a lot to kind of keep track of. And so if you want a little bit more insight on that, I definitely would love for you to hop on the workshop going into next week, and also just shoot me questions in the DMs. But essentially, phase 2 is our fat loss initiation phase. This is when, now you've gotten to a place where you've actually learned about your nutrition. You've learned about your macros. You've learned what it looks like to live at maintenance. You are creating more neutrality with foods and the scale and your body and all of the things. I mean, heaven, right? You have a more inner peace around these things. You've learned a lot more, but still more learning to go. And at this point, we can then transition to a deficit where we can then focus on losing the amount of body fat that is desired, and focusing on having a little bit of that baby restriction. But at this point, we've really worked to upregulate your metabolism in phase 1 that now, you still have a lot of flexibility in your phase 2. Phase 3 is a reverse and rejuvenate phase. This is where a lot of people make a mistake with their fat loss and their calorie deficits. Where we lose the weight, but then what? You lost the weight, now what? You can't just live in a deficit, and we can't just, just try to just maintain with quote unquote this arbitrary diet and exercise, right? We have to have a solid exit strategy. Most women do not have an exit strategy after they're cut. They lose the weight, and then what happens? They start to just slowly over time going back to eating how we usually were. The weekends catch up to us. We start falling off track and we start to gain the weight back. And it's the cycle. So in phase 1, sorry, one second. In phase 1, we are, really focusing on laying the foundation. And this is what you need to be doing in your own life. So maybe phase 1 in your own life is like really taking baby steps in your journey, really getting consistent with the little things like water, your steps. And you might be thinking, but I want to, do all the things and lose fat, get toned. You gotta build it brick by brick, because then that's always why you end up burning out. You know what I mean? You gotta go steady so you can go far, right? And we're so conditioned to always want to go fast and quick and like instant, but then it leaves us crashing and burning every single time. Okay, so phase 1, our build to burn phase. Phase 2, fat loss initiation. Phase 3, reverse and rejuvenate, get you back to a healthy maintenance. And phase 4, our last phase, is lifestyle integration. This is when we are then weaning you off of tracking your macros and living at maintenance. You've lost the body fat, you've built the muscle. Now we can integrate you back into your life to be able to maintain it long term, and no more yo-yo dieting, no more crash dieting and gaining the weight back, or trying new gimmicks and then just gaining even more weight just because, and I'm talking about like rebound weight. Like, you guys have to use discernment when you're hearing my conversations, of course, because you could gain weight, but it could be a good thing. Okay, so weight gain is not always a bad thing. When I talk about like that, I'm talking about like rebound from restriction, okay? And so that is how we take our clients through these phases. And you'll see a bunch of testimonials on my stories, on my Instagram, but I'm going to be talking so much more about how to actually break free from the yo-yo dieting cycle and what steps to really take from there. So make sure you guys tune in to my workshop. It's going to be November 2nd, Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern. If you guys got value from this podcast, please leave a review. And I'm super excited for the next one. Thanks so much for being here with me, guys. Bye.